Child helped a woman on the bus. Days later, a taxi picked her up with a letter. Emily Wilson never imagined that a simple gesture on the bus would change her life forever. The 9-year-old girl was used to facing hardships alongside her grandmother Margaret, but nothing prepared her for what was coming. It all began on a rainy Monday in March, when Emily was returning from school on the crowded Route 348 bus. The child was standing, holding onto the yellow rail, when an elderly woman struggled to board at the Flower Street stop. The woman was visibly trembling and clutching a folder of medical documents to her chest. "Come here, Mum. Take my seat," said Emily, quickly getting up from the window seat. The white-haired woman with round glasses looked at the girl in surprise. Her blue eyes were red, as if she had been crying. "You don't have to, dear. You're just a child. My grandma always says older folks should sit. Please take the seat." With a fragile smile, the woman accepted. Emily noticed her hands weren't just shaking from the cold. It was something deeper. The entire ride, the woman stayed silent, staring out the window with deep sadness. When the bus stopped at the central terminal, the woman slowly stood. Before stepping off, she turned to Emily and whispered, "Thank you, sweetheart. You don't know how much that meant today." Emily just smiled and waved. She had no idea that encounter was only the beginning of a journey that would change both her life and the mysterious woman's forever. 3 days later, on a sunny Thursday, Emily was playing in the small backyard of the house she shared with her grandmother Margaret in Hope Village, on the east side of New York City. The house was simple, 2 rooms and a bathroom, but it was the only home she'd ever known. Her 72-year-old grandmother worked as a cleaner in an office building and took on sewing jobs to make ends meet. The sound of an engine caught Emily's attention. A taxi stopped right in front of their blue-painted wooden gate. The driver, a middle-aged man, stepped out and walked to the entrance. "I'm looking for Emily Wilson," he said, checking a paper in his hand. "That's me," the girl replied, stepping forward curiously. "I have a letter for you. The address matches, right? Carnation Road, number 247. Emily nodded. The driver handed her an elegant white envelope, sealed with a gold ribbon. Her name was written in careful, old-fashioned handwriting. "Who sent it?" Emily asked. "Don't know, miss. Just told to deliver it and wait for your reply." Margaret appeared at the door, drying her hands on her floral apron. Her face tightened with worry at the sight of the taxi and the envelope in her granddaughter's hands. "What's this, Emily?" "A letter for me, Grandma. I don't know who it's from." Margaret examined the envelope skeptically. Years of life had taught her to be wary of unusual situations. "Open it, but be careful." Emily carefully broke the gold seal. Inside was a cream-colored sheet of paper with a handwritten message. "Dear Emily, you don't know me well, but I'm the woman you helped on the bus last Monday. My name is Dorothy Miller. I need to speak with you about something very important, something that could change your family's life. Please come to my address tomorrow at 3 p.m. Bring your grandmother if you'd like. 5th Avenue, 892, apartment 15. With affection and gratitude, Dorothy." Margaret read over her granddaughter's shoulder, her brow furrowing. "This doesn't sit right with me, Emily. What's this about?" "I remember her, Grandma. She was an older lady who got on the bus. She looked really sad. I just gave her my seat." "And now she wants to see you? Why didn't she come here herself?" The taxi driver politely interrupted. "Excuse me, but the lady who hired me asked me to wait for an answer. Are you coming or not?" Margaret looked at Emily, then at the driver. Her decades of intuition told her to be cautious, but she also recognized that sometimes life brought unexpected surprises. "We'll go," Emily decided, before her grandmother could protest. "What harm could it do? We'll go together." "Emily, please, Grandma." She seemed like she needed help. "What if it's something good?" Margaret sighed. She knew her granddaughter's kind heart, a trait inherited from her parents, who had passed away when Emily was just a baby. Maybe it was time to trust the goodness of the world a little more. "All right, but we go together, and if I don't like anything, we leave immediately." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now continuing. The following Friday, Margaret wore her best outfit, a navy blue dress she saved for special occasions, and Emily put on her clean school uniform. They took 2 buses to reach Fifth Avenue in the city center. Building number 892 was old but well-maintained, with a red brick facade and tall windows. The doorman, an impeccably dressed older gentleman, greeted them politely after checking their names on a list. "Apartment 15, 15th floor. Mrs. Dorothy is expecting you." As the elevator ascended, Emily's heart raced. Margaret held her hand firmly, a mix of protectiveness and nervousness in her grip. When the doors opened on the 15th floor, they found a quiet hallway with just 2 doors. Number 15 opened before they could even ring the bell. Dorothy Miller stood there, looking nothing like Emily remembered from the bus. She wore an elegant beige dress, low leather shoes, and her white hair was neatly styled. Her round glasses gleamed under the hallway light. "Emily, my dear, thank you for coming." She turned to Margaret with a respectful smile. "You must be her grandmother. I'm Dorothy Miller. Please come in." The apartment was spacious, furnished with dark wooden antiques. Landscape paintings adorned the walls, and a large window overlooked the bustle of Fifth Avenue. A tray of tea and homemade cookies sat on the coffee table. "Please, have a seat. I know you must be curious about why I asked to meet." Margaret remained guarded, while Emily watched everything with bright-eyed curiosity. "Mrs. Dorothy, with all due respect, what do you want with my granddaughter?" Margaret asked directly. Dorothy took a deep breath before answering. Her hands trembled slightly as she poured the tea. "Margaret, may I call you that? I need to tell you a story that will explain everything. On Monday, when Emily offered me her seat on the bus, I was returning from a very difficult doctor's appointment." Dorothy paused, glancing out the window before continuing. "I've been diagnosed with a degenerative illness. It's not terminal, but it will limit me greatly in the coming years. More than that, that same day I had just left my lawyer's office after updating my will." Margaret and Emily exchanged worried glances. "I'll be direct with you. My family situation is complicated. I have 2 grown children who only come to me when they need money. On Monday, they had just argued with me about my inheritance, saying I was wasting it on frivolous things instead of saving everything for them." Dorothy's voice trembled with emotion. "I left that lawyer's office feeling like the loneliest person in the world. I was questioning whether good people still existed, whether it was even worth trying to help others anymore. Then a 9-year-old girl got on the bus and, without knowing me, offered me her seat." Emily lowered her eyes, embarrassed by the attention. "It was nothing, Mrs. Dorothy." "Oh, but it was, my dear. It meant everything to me at that moment. You restored my faith in human kindness when I needed it most." Dorothy stood up and walked to an old desk, where she took out some papers. "That's why I've made a decision. I want to help your family. I looked into your situation through Emily's school and found out you're struggling." Margaret stiffened immediately. "We don't need charity, Mom." "It's not charity," Dorothy said calmly. "It's recognition. I want to offer Emily a full scholarship to an excellent private school, and I'd like to cover treatment for your arthritis, Margaret. I know you work as a cleaner and your hands hurt badly." Silence filled the room. Margaret was visibly shaken, torn between pride and need. "How do you know about my arthritis?" "Forgive me if I overstepped, but I needed to understand your situation. I don't mean to offend. I genuinely want to help." Emily looked from her grandmother to Dorothy, sensing the tension in the air. Finally, Margaret spoke. "Why would you do this for us? You don't know us." "Because your granddaughter taught me something precious on that bus. That kindness still exists in this world. And because—" Dorothy hesitated for a moment. "Because I know what it's like to grow up without opportunities." Dorothy returned to the desk and picked up an old black and white photograph. "This was me at 9. My family was very poor. I grew up in a tenement in Liberty Heights. A wealthy woman gave me the chance to study, and that's how I changed my life. Now I want to give back what I received." The photo showed a thin, poorly dressed girl with the same determined eyes Dorothy still had at 83. "My husband passed away 10 years ago and left me financially comfortable. I have no grandchildren. My children are only after my money. I want my wealth to do some good before I can no longer decide how it's used." Margaret discreetly wiped away a stubborn tear. That's very generous of you, but there's one condition, Dorothy interrupted. I'd like Emily to come here in the afternoons after school, not to work, but to keep me company. We'll talk, play checkers, and she can tell me about her studies. I'm very lonely and her presence would do me good. Emily looked at her grandmother with pleading eyes. Can I, Grandma? Mrs. Dorothy seems really nice. Margaret was torn between gratitude and the natural distrust she'd developed over the years. I need to think, Mrs. Dorothy. It's a very generous offer, but of course, take all the time you need. Here's my number. Dorothy handed her an elegant card. But know my offer is sincere with no hidden strings. As they prepared to leave, Dorothy called Emily aside. My dear, no matter what your grandmother decides, I want you to know you made a difference in someone's life. Never doubt the power of small gestures. On the way home, Margaret and Emily were mostly silent. Only after getting off the second bus did Margaret speak. Emily, are you sure about this? We don't really know this woman. She seems good, Grandma, and you need to take care of your hands. I see how much they hurt when it rains. Margaret looked at her own hands, swollen and misshapen by arthritis. For years, she'd saved for treatment she knew was beyond her reach. What if it's a scam? She lives in that nice apartment, Grandma. If she wanted to scam someone, it'd be a rich person, not us. Margaret smiled for the first time that day. Her granddaughter's simple wisdom sometimes surprised her. All right, we'll try it. But if anything seems off, we walk away. That night, Emily could hardly sleep from anxiety. The next day at school, she told her teacher, Mary Johnson, about the strange encounter. This story worries me, Emily, the teacher said during recess. I'll call your grandmother so we can talk. The conversation between Margaret and the teacher happened that afternoon. Mary Johnson was a young, dedicated woman who knew the Wilson family's financial situation well. Margaret, I understand your concern, but I looked into Dorothy Miller. She really is a respected retired businesswoman. She ran a very successful clothing factory for decades. So you think it's okay? I think it's worth investigating further. How about accepting it for a trial period? Maybe a week. Margaret agreed with the suggestion. On Saturday morning, she called Dorothy. Mrs. Miller, it's Margaret. We've decided to accept your offer, but just for a week to see how it goes. Perfect, Margaret. Emily can come on Monday at 2 in the afternoon. I'll prepare a nice snack for her. On Monday, Emily arrived at Dorothy's apartment promptly at 2. The woman greeted her with a warm smile and a tight hug. How was school today, dear? Good. Aunt Mary said you're famous. Dorothy laughed heartily. Not famous, I just worked hard all my life. Come, I made a special snack for you. The table was set with an embroidered tablecloth, porcelain plates, and a still warm chocolate cake. Emily had never seen such elegance in a simple meal. Wow, is this a party? Every day with you here will be a party, Emily. As they ate, Dorothy told stories of her poor childhood, how she studied at night while working during the day, how she met her husband and built her business. Emily listened, fascinated, asking smart questions that surprised Dorothy. You're very bright, you know. Were your parents this smart? Emily's face darkened slightly. I don't remember them well. They died when I was a baby. Grandma says my mum was a teacher and my dad worked at a bank. Dorothy felt a pang in her heart. That child had lost so much and yet kept a generous spirit. I'm sure they're proud of you wherever they are. In the following days, a routine settled naturally. Emily arrived at 2, they had lunch together, then played checkers or Dorothy helped with homework. In the afternoon, they strolled down Fifth Avenue or visited nearby bookstores. At the end of the first week, Dorothy called Margaret for a talk. How do you feel about these days, Margaret? Emily is happier than ever. She comes home telling me everything you did, all the stories you shared. And you, still suspicious of me? Margaret sighed deeply. I don't know why, but I trust you. Emily has a good instinct about people. So can we continue? I'd like to start preparing for her new school. The term begins in 2 weeks. It was then that Emily and Margaret's lives took a complete turn. Dorothy had enrolled Emily in St. Catherine Academy, one of the best private schools in the area, with full-time education and extracurricular activities. It's too expensive, Mrs. Miller, Margaret protested when she heard the tuition amount. "Not for me. I have more money than I can spend, and watching Emily grow and learn is the best investment I can make." But not everything would be easy. The second week, when Dorothy took Emily to see the new school, they were approached by a tall, well-dressed man in the parking lot. "Mom, what kind of joke is this?" It was Charles Miller, Dorothy's eldest son. His dark eyes burned with anger as he looked at Emily with disdain. "Charles, what are you doing here? I heard you're paying for private school for a stranger. Have you lost your mind?" Dorothy stood protectively in front of Emily, who had hidden behind her. "It's none of your business how I spend my money." "Yes, it is. That money belongs to the family. And you're throwing it away on the first opportunist who came along. Emily is not an opportunist. She's a good girl who taught me the value of generosity." Charles bent down to Emily's level, his face close to hers. "Listen here, kid. I don't know what little act you put on to fool my mother, but it won't work. I'll figure out your game." Emily began to tremble. She had never been confronted by an adult with such hostility. "Leave her alone," Dorothy shouted, grabbing her son's arm. "How dare you speak to a child like that? This child is stealing our inheritance." "Your inheritance? The money is mine, Charles, and I'll spend it however I please." The argument drew curious looks from other parents arriving at the school. Embarrassed, Dorothy took Emily's hand. "Let's go, sweetheart. We'll come back another day." In the taxi on the way back, Emily was visibly shaken. "Mrs. Dorothy, I don't want to cause trouble in your family. You're not causing any trouble. My children are the ones with problems." "But what if he's right? What if I'm being selfish?" Dorothy held Emily's small hands in hers. "Emily, listen carefully to what I'm about to say. Kindness is never selfish. You've given me back my joy for living. That's priceless." But the confrontation with Charles was only the beginning. In the following days, he showed up at Margaret's house, trying to convince her to stay away from Dorothy. "Your granddaughter is taking advantage of a sick old woman," Charles said when Margaret opened the door. "My mother isn't in her right mind. Your mother is perfectly fine. It's you who isn't well, trying to control her life. Look, I'll be clear. If you walk away now, I'll pay you $5,000. That's more than you make in a year." Margaret slammed the door in his face without responding. That night, she spoke seriously with Emily. "My dear, this is getting complicated. Mrs. Dorothy's son won't give up. But we're not doing anything wrong, Grandma. I know, but sometimes doing the right thing brings bad consequences." Emily thought for a few minutes before answering. "Remember when you taught me that running from problems doesn't solve anything? That we have to face them?" Margaret smiled, her own words coming back to her through her granddaughter's mouth. "You're right. We'll face this together." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. The situation escalated when Charles hired a lawyer to question Dorothy's mental capacity. The claim was that an 83-year-old woman wasn't fit to make major financial decisions. Dorothy found out about the legal action on a Friday when she received a court summons. She was having tea with Emily when the process server rang the doorbell. "What is this, Mrs. Dorothy?" Emily asked, seeing the woman's pale face. "My children are trying to have me declared incompetent. They want to prove I'm crazy so they can control my money." Emily didn't fully understand the legal terms, but she sensed the gravity of the situation. "Does this mean I can't come here anymore?" "I don't know, my dear. Maybe it's best if you stay away until this is resolved." Dorothy tried to hide it, but she was deeply shaken. The possibility of losing her independence, and worse, not being able to see Emily, left her desperate. That night, Dorothy called Margaret. "Margaret, I need to talk to you. It's urgent." On Saturday morning, the two women met at a cafe near Margaret's house. Dorothy was visibly nervous, constantly adjusting her glasses. "My children are suing to have me declared incompetent. They say I'm not mentally fit to manage my money. But that's absurd. You're perfectly fine." "I know, but they have expensive lawyers and Dorothy hesitated. "I'm afraid they might succeed. If that happens, I won't be able to help Emily anymore. I won't even be able to see her." Margaret saw tears forming in the elderly woman's eyes. "What can we do?" I need to prove I'm mentally sound and that my decision to help you was conscious and rational, but I don't know how. Do you have a doctor who can confirm that? I do, but I'm not sure it'll be enough. Charles has influence. He knows a lot of people. The two women fell silent, each lost in thought. It was Margaret who broke the silence. Mrs. Miller, have you ever thought about going to the press, telling your story? How do you mean? This story of an elderly woman being stopped from being generous by her own children. It's the kind of thing that could move people. Dorothy considered the suggestion. She had always been a private person, but maybe it was time to speak up to protect her freedom. Do you know anyone in the press? Not directly, but Emily's teacher has a journalist friend I can ask. That afternoon, Mary Johnson called her friend Jennifer Adams, a reporter for a local paper known for covering social causes. It's an interesting story, Mary. Can I speak with them on Monday? On Monday morning, Jennifer Adams arrived at Dorothy's apartment with a small team. She was a woman in her early 30s, with sharp eyes and a digital recorder. Mrs. Miller, can you tell me the whole story from the beginning? Dorothy recounted everything: the encounter on the bus, her decision to help Emily, her children's reaction, and now the guardianship case. And do you have documents proving your mental capacity? I have recent medical reports, statements from my private doctor. I've never had any cognitive issues. Jennifer also interviewed Margaret and Emily, who explained how the meeting had happened and how Dorothy had changed their lives. Emily, do you understand that some people might think you took advantage of Mrs. Miller? I just offered her my seat on the bus because my grandma taught me to respect elders. I didn't know Mrs. Miller had money. The genuine innocence in Emily's voice convinced Jennifer the story was true. The article was published on Wednesday, under the headline, "9-year-old girl becomes target of family dispute for being kind." The piece detailed the situation and included statements from neighbors, Emily's teacher, and Dorothy's doctor affirming her mental clarity. The response was immediate. Dorothy's phone wouldn't stop ringing with people offering support. Several senior rights organizations spoke out. Volunteer lawyers offered to defend her for free. Charles, however, was furious about the public exposure. On Thursday, he showed up at his mother's apartment with his brother, Robert. "Mom, you've exposed us to the whole country," Charles shouted as soon as Dorothy opened the door. "Don't yell at me, you started this war." Robert, always calmer than his brother, tried to mediate. "Mom, we don't want to hurt you. We just think you're being influenced." "Influenced by who? A 9-year-old child?" "By her family. They must have seen you have money and—" "Enough!" Dorothy cut in. "The two of you only show up in my life when you need money. That girl gave me something you never did, genuine kindness." The argument was interrupted by the doorbell. It was Emily, arriving for her afternoon visit. When she saw the two men in the apartment, she hesitated at the door. "Can I come in, Mrs. Miller?" "Of course, sweetheart." Charles and Robert were already on their way out. Charles looked at Emily with a mix of anger and curiosity. That small, thin child had managed to turn his mother against him. "Listen here, girl," said Charles, pointing his finger at Emily. "I don't know how you did it, but you fooled my mother real good." Emily hid behind Dorothy, frightened by his aggressive tone. "Leave her alone," shouted Dorothy. "If you keep scaring her, I'll call security." "You're choosing a stranger over your own children?" "I'm choosing someone who treats me with kindness over those who only come around for money." The two men stormed out in anger. Robert still tried to talk to his mother in the elevator. "Mom, think carefully about what you're doing. That girl will grow up and forget all about you." "Maybe, but at least right now she's giving me real happiness." After her sons left, Dorothy sank heavily onto the couch. Emily approached and held her hand. "Mrs. Dorothy, I don't want them to fight because of me. It's not because of you, my dear. It's about my freedom to choose how to live my final years." That night, Dorothy made a drastic decision. She called her personal lawyer and scheduled a meeting for the next day. "Dr. Matthews, I want to make some changes to my will." "Mrs. Dorothy, I don't think it's wise to make changes while your sons are questioning your mental capacity." "That's exactly why I want to do it, while I still can decide for myself." On Friday, Dorothy signed a new will. Most of her estate would go to a foundation creating scholarships for underprivileged children. A smaller portion would go to Emily when she turned 18, strictly for education. Charles and Robert would receive only a symbolic amount, but she didn't tell anyone yet. She'd keep it as a trump card if things got worse. The guardianship hearing was scheduled for the following week. Dorothy hired the best elder law attorney money could buy, Dr. August Smith. "Mrs. Dorothy, your case is strong. You have medical reports, witnesses to your sound mind, and now even public support, but I need to prepare you for questioning." Over the weekend, Dorothy rehearsed possible questions Charles's lawyers might ask. Emily helped, pretending to be the attorney and quizzing her on dates, names, and recent events. "What's the name of the president?" Emily asked, imitating a deep voice. "William Thompson," Dorothy answered, laughing at the girl's seriousness. "And what's 7 times 8? 56, Your Honor, Emily." The two laughed together, turning a tense moment into fun. Margaret watched from afar, admiring how her granddaughter could bring Dorothy joy even in the hardest times. On Monday, Dorothy arrived at the courthouse with her lawyer, Margaret, and Emily. Across the room, Charles and Robert waited with their legal team. The judge, Frank Almond, was a middle-aged man known for his fairness and impartiality. "This is a guardianship petition filed by the respondent's sons, alleging mental incapacity to manage her affairs. Mrs. Dorothy, do you understand the proceedings?" "Perfectly, Your Honor. My sons want to control my money because they don't agree with my decisions. Can you explain the decisions that led to this petition?" Dorothy told the whole story clearly and in precise detail. She spoke about meeting Emily on the bus, her loneliness, the joy the girl brought into her life, and her decision to help the family. "Why did you choose to help this particular family?" "Because this child taught me there's still kindness in the world. At a time when I felt abandoned by my own sons, a 9-year-old stranger showed me compassion." Charles's lawyer tried to dismantle the testimony. "Mrs. Dorothy, don't you find it strange that a 9-year-old child would take such an interest in an elderly woman? I find it strange that my grown children only take an interest in my money." Quiet laughter rippled through the courtroom. The judge called for order. The psychiatrist who examined Dorothy was called to testify. "Doctor, what is your assessment of the defendant's mental state?" "Mrs. Dorothy demonstrates full cognitive capacity. Her memory, reasoning, and judgment remain perfectly intact for her age." Charles's lawyer pressed on. "But doctor, don't you think it's rash to spend so much money on strangers?" "Generosity is not a sign of mental incapacity. Many people choose to help others throughout their lives." When Emily was called to testify, the courtroom fell silent. It was unusual for a child to testify in such a case. "Emily, can you tell us how you met Mrs. Dorothy?" With a clear but nervous voice, Emily recounted their meeting on the bus and how she began visiting Dorothy. "And what do you do when you see each other?" "We talk, play checkers. She helps me with homework. Sometimes we go for walks, or she tells me stories about her life." "Emily, did your parents teach you to ask Mrs. Dorothy for things?" "My parents died when I was a baby. My grandma always taught me not to ask anyone for anything." "And did you ever ask Mrs. Dorothy for anything?" "No. She was the one who offered to pay for my school and my grandma's medicine. I didn't even know private schools existed." Emily's simplicity and honesty moved everyone in the courtroom. When Charles's lawyer tried to ask more aggressive questions, the judge reprimanded him. "Counselor, the witness is a child. Moderate your tone." Margaret also testified, explaining her initial hesitation and how she came to trust Dorothy. "Didn't you find Mrs. Dorothy's generosity odd?" "I did. That's why I waited and observed. But I saw it was sincere. My granddaughter would come home telling me things only a good person would do." The trial lasted 3 days. In the end, the judge withdrew to deliberate. Dorothy, Emily, and Margaret waited anxiously in the courthouse hallway. "Mrs. Dorothy, what if the judge rules against you?" Emily asked. "Then we'll have made the most of the time we had together, my dear." But Dorothy was more confident than she let on. The testimonies had been consistent and convincing. An hour later, the judge returned with his decision. After reviewing all testimonies, medical reports, and evidence presented, this court concludes that the defendant, Dorothy Miller, possesses full mental and legal capacity to manage her affairs. The petition for guardianship is dismissed. Dorothy hugged Emily with tears in her eyes. Margaret sighed in relief. Across the room, Charles and Robert spoke nervously with their lawyers. Furthermore, the judge continued, this court condemns any attempt to restrict an elderly person's freedom to practice generosity, provided they are of sound mind. As they left the courthouse, Dorothy felt victorious, but also sad. The legal battle had confirmed what she already knew. Her children cared only about her money, not her well-being. Mrs. Dorothy, now you can rest easy, Margaret said. Not entirely. I know Charles won't give up so easily. Dorothy was right. In the days that followed, Charles tried other tactics. He spread rumors in Dorothy's building, claiming she was being exploited. He called Emily's school to cause trouble. He even hired a private investigator, Mark Oliver, to look into the Wilson family. Mark, an honest man, concluded after a week of investigation that there was nothing suspicious about the family. Margaret worked honestly, Emily was a good student, and there was no evidence of any scheme. Dr. Charles, I didn't find anything that compromises the family. They're hard-working and honest people. That's impossible. There must be something. If there is, I didn't find it. And trust me, I looked hard. Charles was furious with the report and refused to pay the detective. Mark, on the other hand, decided to tell Dorothy about the investigation. Mrs. Dorothy, Mr. Charles hired me to investigate the Wilson family. I thought you should know. Dorothy was shocked by the extent of her son's paranoia. And what did you find? That they're good people, just like you always said. There's nothing suspicious. That was the last straw for Dorothy. That night she called Charles. Charles, we're having a talk tomorrow. You, me, and Robert. It's time to settle this once and for all. The next day, the three met at Dorothy's apartment. Charles arrived visibly angry, while Robert kept a more conciliatory tone. Mom, we hope you've come to your senses, Charles said without preamble. I have, especially about the two of you. Dorothy took a deep breath before continuing. You're my sons, and I'll always love you. But I won't tolerate you trying to control my life anymore. We just want to protect you. Protect me from what? From being happy, from having company, from doing good. Robert tried to mediate. Mom, we understand you feel alone, but this family might be taking advantage. Robert, you've known me for over 40 years. Do you really think I'm that naive? Dorothy walked to her desk and pulled out some documents. Since you insist on talking about money, I'll be clear with you. She showed them the new will, explaining that most of her estate would go to the Educational Foundation. You lost the right to my inheritance when you tried to take away my right to live. Charles turned pale. You can't do this. I can, and I have. My money, my rules. And that girl? Will she inherit everything? Emily will receive a sum for her education when she turns 18. The rest will help other children like her. Robert began to cry. Mom, can't you see we're desperate because we care about you? If you cared, you would have visited me before I got rich. You would have asked about my loneliness before I met Emily. The conversation lasted 2 hours, with moments of heated argument and silent reflection. In the end, Dorothy made an offer. You have a choice. Accept that Emily and Margaret are part of my life, and try to rebuild our family relationship, or continue this war and lose me for good. Charles stood abruptly. We choose our dignity. We won't accept being replaced by strangers. He stormed out, slamming the door. Robert stayed a few more minutes, looking at his mother with sadness. Mom, I'm sorry it's come to this. Me too, Robert. But the door will always be open if you change your mind. After Robert left, Dorothy sat in her favorite armchair and cried, not from sadness, but from relief. Finally, she had clarity about her family relationships. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now continuing. In the following weeks, Dorothy and Emily's life returned to normal. The girl continued her daily visits, now certain nothing would separate them again. Dorothy began formalizing the creation of her educational foundation. One day, while organizing some of Dorothy's old documents, Emily found a box of yellowed photographs. Mrs. Dorothy, can I look at these photos? Of course, dear. They're pictures of my family when I was young. Emily flipped through the old images curiously. Suddenly, she stopped at one particular photo and turned very pale. Mrs. Dorothy, who is this woman? Dorothy adjusted her glasses to see better. This is my sister Lucy. She disappeared from our family over 50 years ago. Disappeared? How? We fought over our father's inheritance. I was young and proud, and so was she. We never spoke again. Emily studied the photo with growing attention. The woman had features that seemed familiar. Mrs. Dorothy, do you know what happened to her after the fight? I heard she got married and changed her name. I tried looking for her a few times but never found her. Emily ran out of the apartment, leaving Dorothy confused. She returned 20 minutes later with Margaret, who carried a small box of papers. Grandma, show Mrs. Dorothy that photo of our great-grandmother. Margaret pulled out an old black and white photograph from the box. It was the same woman from Dorothy's photo, just a few years older. This is my mother-in-law, Lucy Wilson, my late husband's mother. Dorothy took the photo with trembling hands. It was unmistakably her sister. My God, Emily is my great-granddaughter, Margaret finished, also in shock. Silence filled the room as the three processed the discovery. Dorothy and Emily were distant relatives. Their meeting on the bus hadn't been just a coincidence. How is this possible? Dorothy whispered. Margaret began connecting the dots. Lucy always talked about a younger sister who became wealthy. She said they had fought and that she missed her, but pride kept her from reaching out. She talked about me. Yes, she did, especially in her later years. She said she wanted to ask for forgiveness but didn't know how. Dorothy began to cry uncontrollably. 50 years of guilt and longing finally made sense. Is she gone? 10 years now, but she kept this photo and some old letters. Margaret showed yellowed letters Lucy had written but never sent. All were addressed to Dorothy, asking for forgiveness and sharing her life. Emily watched the two older women, slowly grasping the magnitude of the situation. Does this mean we're family? It does, my dear, Dorothy said, hugging Emily. Fate brought us together in the most impossible way. That night, the three spent hours piecing together their family's story. Dorothy learned about Lucy's marriage, her children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. She discovered her sister had been happy despite financial struggles. She always said her biggest regret was the fight with you, Margaret shared. She repeated that pride had cost her too much. Mine too, Dorothy admitted. I spent decades wondering how she was. The discovery changed everything. Dorothy now understood why she had felt so connected to Emily from the start. Blood truly spoke louder, but the revelation also brought new challenges. When Charles heard the news through gossiping neighbors, he grew even angrier. Now it makes sense, he shouted over the phone to his mother. It was all planned from the beginning. Charles, don't be ridiculous. How could a 9-year-old plan something like this? Her family must have found out who you were and sent her to get close. Dorothy laughed bitterly. You know your own mother so little that you think I wouldn't notice a scam. I don't know what to think about this whole story anymore. Then stop thinking and start feeling. This child is our family, Charles, your cousin niece. Too distant to matter. To you, maybe. To me, she's family. Charles slammed the phone down. His anger now had a new element, envy that a distant relative had won the affection of the mother he had lost. In the following months, Dorothy devoted herself to learning more about her rediscovered family. She visited the cemetery where Lucy was buried, placing flowers on the grave and silently asking for forgiveness. Emily, on the other hand, loved listening to the stories Dorothy told about her great-grandmother Lucy. She discovered she had inherited her love for reading and knack for numbers from her. Your great-grandmother was very smart, you know. She wanted to study, but back then poor women rarely had that opportunity. Is that why you want me to study? That's why, and because it's your right. Lucy would be proud to see you in a good school. The bond between Dorothy and Margaret also grew stronger. The two women realized they had much in common. Both had raised children alone, faced financial hardships, and developed remarkable inner strength. Margaret, you've taken such good care of our Emily. Our Emily? I like it when you say that. She is ours, me as her great-great-aunt, you as her grandmother. Let's look after her together. Emily's first birthday after discovering their family ties was an emotional celebration. Dorothy organized a party in the apartment, inviting her teacher Mary, some classmates, and dear neighbors. "This isn't just Emily's birthday," Dorothy said during the toast with grape juice. "It's the birthday of our family's reunion." Emily received gifts she had never imagined: books, art supplies, beautiful clothes, and most importantly, the certainty that she belonged to a family that loved her. But not everything was settled. Robert, who had remained neutral during the dispute, surprised everyone by showing up at the party. "Mom, can I talk to you?" Dorothy tensed, fearing another confrontation in front of Emily. "Robert, if you've come to argue, I've come to apologize." The room fell silent. Robert continued, "I've thought a lot about what happened. Charles is blinded by greed, but I just wanted my mother back." Dorothy approached her son cautiously. "And now?" "Now I understand I lost my mother because I stopped being a son who deserved to have one." Robert knelt before Emily, who watched him curiously. "Emily, you brought back the smile to my mother that I had taken away. Thank you for taking care of her." Emily, ever generous, extended her hand to Robert. "Do you want some cake? Grandma Margaret made it special." The simplicity of the gesture moved Robert deeply. Here was a child offering friendship after all he had done to separate her from Dorothy. "I'd love some, if you'll let me." "Of course. Family is family, right, Mrs. Dorothy?" Dorothy smiled with tears in her eyes. Her surrogate granddaughter was teaching forgiveness to her own son. In the months that followed, Robert slowly rebuilt his relationship with Dorothy. He began visiting her regularly, got to know Margaret better, and developed genuine affection for Emily. Charles, on the other hand, remained stubborn. He even moved away to avoid what he called the humiliation of seeing a poor child receiving the love he felt entitled to. "Mom, Charles isn't coming back," Robert said one afternoon, after trying once more to reason with his brother. "I know, and I know it's his choice." "Don't you miss him?" Dorothy looked at Emily, playing on the floor with dolls she had received, and at Margaret, humming as she prepared dinner. "I miss the son Charles could have been, but I don't miss the bitter man he became." Dorothy's educational foundation was officially established a year after the encounter on the bus. It was named the Lucy Wilson Foundation, in honor of the sister she had lost and rediscovered through Emily. "We're going to help other children like you," Dorothy explained to Emily during the inauguration ceremony. "Will they live with you too?" "No, my dear. You're special. You're family." The foundation began by offering scholarships to 10 underprivileged children. Emily was chosen as the first ambassador, sharing her story to inspire other families. Margaret, in turn, became the administrative coordinator of the foundation. Her life experience and understanding of the struggles faced by poor families made her perfect for the role. "I never imagined I'd work in an office," Margaret said to Dorothy. "I still feel strange in formal clothes." "You've always been an executive, Margaret, just a family executive, which is much harder." Robert also got involved with the foundation, offering his expertise in business administration. It was his way of honoring Lucy's memory and rebuilding family ties. 2 years after the encounter on the bus, Dorothy received an unexpected phone call. It was Charles. "Mum, can I come over? I need to talk to you." Dorothy was surprised, but agreed. Charles arrived in the late afternoon, visibly changed. He was thinner, with graying hair and a tired expression. "How are you, Mom?" "I'm well, Charles. And you?" "Not so good. That's why I'm here." Charles explained he had gone through a financial crisis after making poor investments. He lost his house, his car, and had been unemployed for months. "I came to ask for help. No, I came to ask for forgiveness." Dorothy stayed silent, waiting for him to continue. "I lost everything because of greed, Mom. And what hurts most is knowing I also lost the best mother in the world." "Charles, let me finish. I know I don't deserve it, but I'd like to meet Emily and to apologize to Mrs. Margaret." "They're in the kitchen. Shall we go?" The meeting between Charles and Emily was touching. The girl, now 11 and more mature, welcomed him without resentment. "Are you Uncle Charles, the one Grandma Dorothy talks about?" "Yes, I am. And you're Emily, the one who changed my mum's life." "I didn't change it. I just gave her my seat on the bus." Charles smiled for the first time in months. Sometimes the simplest gestures are the most powerful. Margaret also welcomed him kindly, offering coffee and homemade cake. "Mr. Charles, your mother suffered a lot because of this separation." "I know. And I also know you took care of her when I should have." The reconciliation wasn't immediate or easy. Charles had to prove he had genuinely changed. Dorothy helped him find a job, but made it clear he'd have to earn back her trust. "Charles, the door is open, but you'll have to walk through it humbly." "I understand, Mom, and I accept." The first Christmas with the family reunited was a significant milestone. Dorothy, Margaret, Emily, Robert, and Charles gathered in the apartment on Fifth Avenue for a simple but meaningful dinner. "I'd like to make a toast," Dorothy said, raising her glass of grape juice, "to our unlikely but true family." "To second chances," Charles added. "To the kindness that brings people together," said Robert. "To the family the heart chooses," said Margaret. "To the seat on the bus that changed everything," Emily concluded, making everyone laugh. That night, Dorothy felt complete for the first time in decades. She had regained her children, reunited with lost family, and discovered that true wealth lay in human connections. 5 years had passed since the encounter on the bus. Emily, now 14, was one of the top students in her school. She dreamed of becoming a doctor to help others, just as Dorothy had helped her family. "Grandma Dorothy, when I grow up, I want to be like you." "How so, my dear?" "I want to use my life to help people." Dorothy, now 88, smiled with pride. Her mission was complete. The Lucy Wilson Foundation had grown and served over 100 children. Margaret had become a respected manager, Robert handled finances, and even Charles volunteered in educational activities. "You know, Emily," Dorothy said one Sunday afternoon, "when you offered me that seat on the bus, you saved much more than just a tired old lady." "What did I save?" "You saved my faith in humanity. And you taught me that family isn't just who we're born with. It's who we choose to love." Emily hugged Dorothy affectionately. "You saved me too, Grandma Dorothy. You gave me a real family. We saved each other, my dear. And that's the most beautiful thing about love. It always comes back multiplied." That afternoon, the 3 generations sat together on the living room sofa, Dorothy sharing old stories, Margaret knitting a new coat for Emily, and the girl doing her homework. It was a simple scene, yet filled with the love that had begun with a small gesture on the bus. Outside, life rushed on at its frantic pace along Fifth Avenue. But inside, time seemed to stand still, celebrating the magic of encounters that change lives forever. Emily and Dorothy's story became a legend in the neighborhood. People talked about the girl who offered her seat on the bus and found a family. They spoke of the woman who learned that true wealth lies in sharing what you have. And sometimes on Monday mornings, when the crowded Route 348 bus passed down Flower Street, someone would remember the story and offer their seat to an older person. Because small acts of kindness have the power to multiply, creating waves of love that spread far beyond what we imagine. That bus seat had become so much more than an empty spot. It had become a symbol that compassion still exists, and that sometimes the people we meet by chance are exactly the ones our hearts have been searching for. The end. What a touching story, don't you think? Tell us what you thought of Emily and Dorothy's tale. Do you believe small gestures can truly change lives? Have you ever experienced something similar? Share your heartfelt thoughts in the comments. We love reading your stories. And don't forget to like this video, and most importantly, subscribe to the channel so you won't miss other uplifting stories that bring hope and prove love always wins.